Fantastic, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Jack Kirschman, and it's a pleasure to be with Steff from Rabbit and Pork. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm buzzing after the panel this morning.
Oh yeah, so we'll get into that in a second. But I want to know where the name of your agency
I think
came
everyone does. Someone shouted down the escalator at me earlier, asking where it had come from. It's Cockney rhyming slang for talk. So it's a voice experience agency. I think most other agencies that are specializing in voice use like voice in the name. But we're part of a wider group of agencies, and they all have slightly strange names. It's like Roast, Kitty, and so this is the latest one in the group.
Interesting. Okay, so your panel, like what was it about, and what was the stuff that you covered?
It was the future of voice. So led by James, forget his surname, but from the IAB, he was moderating, and then there was a woman, Claire, from Essence, and Patrick from Vayner Media. So varying kind of backgrounds in voice technology, and just talking about like where it is right now, where it's going in the future, things to look out for, what to take advantage of.
Okay, and so what kind of clients are you working with? Is it a range or? It's
a range. We launched in October last year, so our first few clients are kind of cross-selling from existing clients within the wider agency. So we've got a few insurance clients on board at the moment, we've got a healthcare client, and then a property client, but we're in talks with all sorts. I mean, from like FMCG all the way through to it's medical. So it's pretty broad. Everyone's interested in it at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how, as an agency, do you differentiate the stuff that's like the flash in the pan versus stuff that has like actual longevity?
Yeah, I think that is the challenge. So we take a very data-driven approach to things. So we developed this voice search ranking report. So that was like an industry first, where our MD, he did some analysis across 23 different verticals, and he developed a tool that could fire questions at the Google Assistant to like document the output and then categorize it and see where there's a difference between what your smart speaker would give you as an answer versus like what you would get on your mobile or your desktop, and where there's opportunities. So in some verticals, you'll see like 50% of the questions, it says, I'm sorry, I don't know how to help you with that, or I don't know how to help yet. And that might be because the answers that are available online or on websites and stuff aren't structured in the right way. So it could be that you have to go and like structure your website content, or it could be that you need to build like a voice app, completely unique standalone product to answer those queries. So that's where we start with, is like seeing where you can essentially steal market share, and then also to support existing products. So yeah, basically how can voice make the user, like the consumer's life, the hard and fast rule is like easier, faster, or more natural. So because I think a lot of brands are talking about like, we need to do something with voice, getting involved, but not spending enough time maybe thinking about the use case for it. It's like I heard there was one company that launched a Find My Keys app, like a voice app, but the problem with that is that you have to actually talk and say, hey Alexa, launch Find My Keys, at which point you've already thought, obviously I need to find my keys. So it's like, that's pointless. But then there's others where it's like, Domino's, you could say, order me my regular, add pepperoni, deliver to, things like that, where you don't once have to take out your mobile. That's really useful.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I've spoken to, just this morning I've spoken to some interesting people from all range of agencies, from like traditional creative agencies to podcast production agencies, and I think the interesting thing that came out of all of that is around the fundamentals staying the same. So and there are so many different mediums to communicate with customers, there are so many different formats, styles, but it seems to me that one thing is ensuring that you are still delivering the right message in the right time at the right place.
Exactly, and a big thing with voice is what is the brand voice actually, because that's, you have to keep it consistent with, especially for big established brands, like what's the kind of tone of voice that you've gone out with in your other communications, and how does that transfer across to a smart speaker? But the fundamentals remain the same. I think the designing for voice is very different from designing for anything else, because you can't see it.
Yeah.
So that's a new challenge, but it's the underpinning, same.
Patrick, you said Patrick was on your panel, and he was down here yesterday he did a podcast recording for us for one of our series, and he was telling me, he may have told this story on stage, so I might be repeating it, but he was saying how an older member of his family was at a recent Thanksgiving dinner shouting at a lamp, thinking it was a Amazon Alexa.
No, he didn't tell that story, but that's okay. So in a way that kind of leads into what people are saying about where the future is going, which is that you expect it to be omnipresent. I mean, for younger people as well, it's just like, and especially for kids growing up now and getting used to like talking to smart speakers and stuff. But like I personally, I've got a Google Home in my room, but I've also got a Beats speaker which doesn't have an assistant built in, and you get confused because you're like, okay, Google, play Spotify, and then I'll switch on my my speaker, which has got slightly better sound, and then shout at it, and it doesn't switch off. And we're moving towards an area where people are going to be expecting to like talk to anything around them, inanimate objects, all the time, and expect something to perk up and do what you ask for.
Yeah, but I think you can learn something from that story, right? Almost like future looking in some ways, that things are going to have voice assistants built into them.
Yeah.
And in terms of just like how natural the stuff is that you're doing with brands, like how I don't know, like what's a long way of answering a question, but like what's the creative process like from the beginning when you're working with clients?
So the first step, and quite an important one, is running a workshop. So you'll get people from the client side, people from the agency side with different areas of expertise. So whether it's dev, so what is and isn't possible from a tech perspective, conversational designers, basically just creative thinkers who come in for the ideation process, and then maybe people with more of like a search background, which know the kind of queries that people are already asking about the brand, get all of those, and then get someone like a brand manager, head of marketing, a few others from the client side, and essentially the best thing to do is just come up with like as many ideas as possible. So start off by thinking about your user and your normal consumer and like their standard day, so and where your brand could be useful at any point of that day. So while getting dressed in the bedroom before heading to work, what kind of things are you going to be asking? What's the commute like? Do I need an umbrella? Those kind of things. So if you're a travel voice app, then can you give them something that's a slightly augmented experience beyond which like what TFL can offer? Or when they're in the car on the way to work, like they're talking to the smart speaker that's built into their car, what can you serve then while they're at work? Those kind of things. So, and coming up with like all these different ideas and then choosing one or two to really hone in on, because I think that's the biggest challenge right now, is just getting started. Like find one thing that's a good idea, and so spend a bit of time on planning, and then once you've chosen that, then it's identifying like the different ways in which people would interact with it, mapping out the conversation flow, and then once all of that planning is put in place, then it actually only goes into development. So the dev side of things often isn't huge and laborious, but it's all the different ways in which a conversation could go, where you're going to like tail off and not be able to answer the question that the user's got, and where do you send them next? Like that's the really complicated part. So, so that's the main chunk. And then if you are integrating with the client's internal systems, if it's like an insurance client, for example, we're working with, like, then how do you integrate with their quote engine or claims? And then, so basically taking them from like an end-to-end process, from research all the way through to completion. And then once you've got it live, because it's a whole new area, you don't know, like it's the first time that people are actually within your brand's environment and asking questions of it. So then it's like tracking where are there questions that people are asking, and your app was going, sorry, we can't help you, and then building out the content so that you can help them the next time around. So it's very much like a circular process.
Right. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Cool.
Pleasure.
Pleasure.